Okay, so your question was, how do you explain what we do?
Mm,
Okay, great question, because it's not easy. Um,
exactly.
yeah,
Without sitting
so
there like without sitting there like half an hour.
I know, yeah. Without going into all of neuroanatomy and what applied
Yeah.
neuroscience actually is. Yeah, it's so colloquially we call ourselves neurotrainers, right? And I usually start by saying, um, I help people with pain or performance by intentionally training the nervous system and the brain. Full stop. Some people will get it. They'll be like, oh, okay. I kind of understand what you mean by that. Some people are gonna be like, okay, tell me more. And then I can start to go into more detail. Because the tough thing is there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what it means to train the brain.
Mm.
Most people think it's like brain games or it's meditation or like logic puzzles, like those applications like luminosity or,
Mm.
which we know as very much frontal lobe kind of training, which is great. Those can be helpful. But most of what neurotraining is and applied neurology is using the body to specifically target areas of the brain to make it perform better and to relieve pain. So the connection between brain and body is something that I try to help them understand. Because another problem that we often run into when explaining this and when people think about neurotraining is they think of the brain and the mind as separate from the body.
Mm.
And we know they're not at all. They are inextricably linked in all the ways. So if I can help them connect that in my explanation, because we're targeting specific brain areas, that's true, which is kind of incredible that we can even do that without like having to do imaging and stuff like that. But we can see what type or what parts of your brain are under functioning or maybe overactive in the case of like survival brain and fight or flight, like that kind of stuff. And we can specifically target the brain through the body, which I think is important for people to understand when we talk about this.
That's an important point, yeah.
And when I say through the body, another thing that people disregard just out of hand is anything above the neck, right? When we talk about through the body, they think neck down, which all of that's included. And when we can work directly with the nerves, we can work with, all of the muscles and joints and bones and skin and all the different receptors. But perhaps even bigger opportunities lie above the neck with our eyes, with our inner ear, and with what are called cranial nerves that innervate the cranium and the face, the jaw, the mouth, the tongue, that go straight into the brainstem. Those places are a really big, like treasure chest of opportunity for affecting the brain, which controls the entire body. So they're all included in body, right? But they're ways that we affect the brain and how it functions by way of the body.
That was brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No, that's good.
cool. We got it on recording too. So if you ever want to go back and watch that again,
Yeah, please. Yes, that'll be good.
yeah,
Because it's so difficult when people ask, so what do you do? And it's like, I go into freeze. It's like, where do I start, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true because there's just so much, you have so much knowledge in your head and so many tools in your toolbox that even describing in a succinct way what it is that you do, it can be very difficult. I've run into that for sure. I try to keep it as simple as possible. And then
Yeah,
I try to let them lead the conversation a little bit. Like I just want to spark curiosity in that
exactly.
person, and they're
I
gonna
think
help
when
drive.
they ask questions, then it's good. So that we
Exactly.
spark the curiosity and then they can ask the questions.
That's exactly right. That's what I'm always trying to do as much as I can.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. And I think it's also important to pick them up where they are. So try and speak in their language, because oftentimes I'll find myself using all these terms and I'm like, oh no, they probably don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. So the way you did
Yeah.
it was quite easy and understandable for the layperson.
That's kind of the art that comes with the science, right? The art of coaching really
Yeah.
is being able to communicate it in a way wherever somebody's at, you
Yeah.
know. And I remember, as a general rule, um, I know my copywriting mentors and stuff would often say this, and other editors that I've talked to is you write to your audience, and in general, you want to write to like an eighth grade level or below. Because you don't ever, the worst thing you can do is make somebody feel stupid,
Yeah.
you know? And I am definitely, guilty of that, not intentionally, but using big words and jargon, that's kind of fancy and it feels cool. It's like, I know what a mesencephalon is.
I was just gonna say it's also like a thing of I mean I'm gonna be super honest. It's like I can boost my confidence of this is what I know,
Yeah.
but in the end, it's just boosting my confidence, but it's not helping the other person. So
Yeah.
it's really, yeah,
It's kind of, yeah, it's ego driven in a way.
it is, yeah.
Yeah. But if we could really truly meet somebody where they're at, um, and there is an art to that because you got to use analogies, you got to um, take everything that you've learned and then rework it in a way. And that's where true understanding comes in.
And
When you,
make it applicable to them. Like, why would
yeah,
they want to do it? Like, what are they going to get out of it?
yep,
Like, you would
yeah,
probably explain it differently to a business person than you would to a kindergarten teacher, like why they would want to do this, you know?
hmm yeah. And the simplest way that I found to do that is, like you said, put it in terms they understand and use examples from their life,
Exactly, yeah.
which is where that, stoking their curiosity comes in too. Again, you know, try to find ways where you can lead them a little bit so that they ask questions, so they make the connection. Like, oh, I can kind of see where that sympathetic, like that stress system kicks in for me when Timmy won't shut up and he's just going on a terror in my kindergarten class, and
Yeah.
then how I react to it. So does that mean that my midbrain, is that what you called it, is doing this? And it's like, yes, exactly. Right. So um man, more conversations like that. The more conversations like that you can have, the stronger and stronger your communication will get.
Mm.
Because it's great to talk to other professionals like this, because we can talk on the level and really get into detail and all that. But man, the hard part, the challenging part is talking to regular people that have no idea what you're talking about. For instance, talk to my grandma who turns 89 next week. I've done neurotraining sessions with her and trying to communicate to her. She's just so old school. She's like, oh, okay, whatever you say. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging.
It really is, and I think I need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Of And this is where I think I hold myself back, is I hate that feeling of not being good at something. And
Mm.
but you have to go through that to get good.
Hmm.
And on a logical level, I know it, and it's still like so difficult to just go out there, do it, and then be able to face that like muck feeling of, oh, I'm not getting this across correctly, and she's not understanding it. Um, and
Yeah.
to just, yeah. But I think that you're right. The more often I do it in different places, the better it'll get.
Yeah, and that works with, in a meta sense, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. The more you put yourself out there into
Mm,
uncomfortable situations, the more comfortable you become
yeah.
in those situations. And on a neuroscience level, there's a part of your brain called the mid-anterior cingulate cortex. Have you ever heard of this part?
Yes, I have. But please do remind me.
Yeah, so it's up kind of front of the brain. It's at like the front of your insula and in the frontal lobe. So there's connections there with the insula. But it's primarily involved in willpower and motivation. So um the cool thing about it is that you can train it. Long story short, like it will grow or shrink based on how much you put yourself into uncomfortable
Mm,
situations. It's like the more we do hard things, the stronger that area of the brain will get, and it will actually kind of hypertrophy like muscles. Um, the cool thing, and depending on your perspective on it, is that once you get more comfortable with doing hard things, then you have to seek out new hard things. The example I always give is cold plunges or cold exposure. Like I hate them, but I love them. You know, when you first start doing them, they're terrible. They're so painful and you don't want to do it and you just have to force it and you really get some good growth there, right? You get some, it's powerful. Um, but over time, after you do it for a while, it never really gets easy. There's always a hesitation. You're like, oh, do I really want to do this? This is going to be really uncomfortable for a minute. But you kind of train your brain to be like, you know what? But it feels so good afterward. I'm going to have this huge spike in dopamine for hours, right? My recovery's better. Your mind kind of just like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So
yeah.
just shut up, brain. Just go do it. So it becomes easier in that sense. So
I like to ask, yeah.
you start to lose the benefits for that mid anterior cingulate cortex, the mid ACC there. So the cold plunge no longer has the same positive effect for that brain area, even though it still kind of feels hard. But you get what I'm saying. Like once it starts to become easier, you have to go seek out something else that's really hard, something that you really don't want to do. And when you do it, you get those big benefits. So, in a meta sense, right, the stronger that gets, the easier doing the hard thing gets, no matter what the hard thing is. But you have to continually seek out those new hard things to keep it getting stronger. It's kind of like in the weight room or out on your run or whatever. You can't just continue to do the same exercise at the same load
Mm,
because you're going to adapt to it and you'll no longer get the positive stimulus. In fact, you'll probably start to regress a bit. Like you can maintain for a while, but there really is no staying the same, right? You're always getting better or you're getting worse.
that is so true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
Actually, for the longest time, I wasn't allowed to do, out of medical reasons, the cold plunges. But now that
mm,
I've gained weight, I think I could do it. So it's now, that would be a good thing to try. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to go straight fully immersed right away. Right. A lot of my clients that I recommend cold plunges to, I'll say start with just your feet
Mm.
in some ice water or just your hands. I would probably start with the feet because the hands are painful.
Okay.
But hands, feet, or face.
I was just gonna say face, yeah.
Yeah, put your face in some ice water. It's good for your skin. Reduces
Yeah.
inflammation. Get rid of bags under your eyes if you have them.
I'm gonna do the face, yeah.
Yeah. And usually everyone always asks, how long? It kind of depends on with the face, I mean, you got to hold your breath. So usually hold my breath until I need to take a breath. Come out, take a big breath, and then hold it again, go back in for three times maybe. But for like the hands or the feet, or if you do fully immersed or like a cold shower or something, um, I usually wait until the first major shock. I wait until I can get my breathing back to normal.
Okay.
And as a starting point, that's usually good. And then you can kind of work up from there. Um, but if you're not familiar, it's just a general rule, like 11 minutes per week for cold exposure is usually a pretty good number to shoot for.
Okay, 11 minutes.
Yeah. So, um, my brother has a cold plunge.
I was just gonna say, I think Hannah and Nick, they do it all the time, and you go to them, right? Or
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah.
that's usually where I get my cold plunge in. And I haven't been there in the last 2 weeks because of the hospital, but um, I'm usually over there like 4 to 5 times a week.
Oh, nice.
But it's only 2 or 3 minutes at a time
Yeah.
because they keep it nice and cold.
I've seen that people like put socks on. Do you put socks on or do you just go completely bare?
I don't, no, I don't put anything on my hands or feet, but that's not a uncommon practice and not a bad idea, especially if you have circulation issues or if it's just really painful. Or if you're going to do fully immersed, you can just keep your hands and feet out of the water. When I'm first starting out, I do that. I'll keep my toes and my hands out of the water. And then for like the last maybe minute, then I'll put them in. Because, yeah, it can be painful when that blood leaves your hands. It gets a little achy. It's not super fun.
Wow.
But of all of the, I want to say biohacking, but I don't really like that word very much. But of all of these like I would say long tail methods. Does that sound, do you know what I mean when I say that? There's like
Mm.
the big rocks. If we had a graph that went like this, there's the really important stuff that makes the biggest difference right here, like sleep, exercise, nutrition, that kind of stuff, neurohygiene. And then there's like the longer tail things that don't, they make a difference, but it's not the huge 80
Yeah.
20, right? I would consider cold plunge kind of on the tail end. I think
Okay.
it's more powerful than a lot of those other things, at least for me, like red light therapy, like you know, some of the other methods, but um, of those, I think it's the most powerful. Like the mental health benefits, the willpower benefits. When you get in there and you suffer through that, everything else in your day feels pretty easy, you know,
Yeah.
including like hard conversations, and you're just kind of zen. And you get that big dopamine spike that lasts for quite a while. Um,
Okay.
Yeah, it's really made a big difference for me, especially here in the summer, which I guess I just saw on Instagram we passed. We set a new record this summer for the most consecutive days over 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh my gosh.
I think we're at 78.
I'm gonna have to see what that is in Celsius.
Yeah, I think I don't know, 37 or something.
37.7.
37.7.
Sure.
Yeah, it's pretty warm.
Wow.